G'day guys, welcome to another weekly developer update. Once again, we have Armeanio joining us. Welcome, mate. How's things?
Good. It's a big week. It's a big week in terms of updates. Probably the thing that we really need to discuss is EIP-27. We have the node version 4.0.29 that's been pushed to all of the different mining pools with instructions in terms of how to configure the update if they're going to support it. And then it becomes our job to try to make that transparent so miners can point their power to what they want to vote for. Yeah,
and the indicative vote did pass. Just have to remind everyone that was an indicative vote, and we're on mainnet at the moment, so there'll be one to watch at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting how this works. So you have, let's say, the distribution of hash rate, right, across pools, but then you kind of have a secondary factor, which is luck. So what actually happens is the blocks themselves get tallied, and so if 90% of the blocks pass that threshold, then it's going to automatically update. Now, of course, sometimes people mine within relative luck, and sometimes we have some sleepers, so there's always like a certain coin flip game of chance at play that we can't really do anything about. It's just part of the voting.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately going to be the block tally.
Yeah, so that's a voting epoch itself, isn't it? It's not it's determined at each block, but it's at a combined total for the epoch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we'll see, how many pools support it. I do believe the majority of them, have, as they did with the indicative vote. But then we also have to see where's Lady Luck in the vote. And, who knows? Maybe solo miner that's against it, runs the table. It's always a certain game of chance, exactly. But that's proof of work. That's proof of work for you.
Have you guys been in contact with the mining pools themselves about this recent update?
Yeah, they received the node version as soon as Alex released it, along with some previous instructions in terms of, how to configure their setup to support EIP-27. And, we're pretty hands-off with it. They asked us, okay, why are you doing this? They went and talked to a lot of their miners. And, the general consensus initially was green. And so then, Alex went about integrating EIP-27, and we actually, it took a little bit more time than we initially planned. And it wasn't so much the smart contract aspect of it that took extra time. It was actually making sure that miners had a vote.
That's the most important thing, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. In proof of work, when ecosystems fracture, it just creates drama. It really does. I guess there could be a couple of holdouts that are like, okay, well, I want to be Ergo Classic, but part of our governance is that you really do need the super majority, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have, a minor percentage of hash rate that's left over that wants to, fork or something like that, it doesn't make much economic sense to do that.
Most definitely. All the major transaction fees, etc., will all be on the main chain itself. So, having that super majority of 90+%, it's beneficial to everyone. Having the network security economically, etc.
Yeah, and as Ergo advances, evolves, miner-driven governance is going to become more and more important. There's a lot of ways that miners can adjust the parameters of the system that will ultimately, help them be profitable if that becomes an issue. Obviously, being proof of work, we need to pay our small operators and a security subsidy. in order to get the incentive for them to mine and essentially secure our chain. That's important.
Most definitely.
So the other thing probably has to do with different attacks. If Ergo started seeing kind of spam attacks as an example, one way to mitigate that is to raise the transaction fee to where it's no longer as economically feasible to spam the network. You got to pay. And so, in time, that may be something that we have to address. And so having a mechanism to not only kind of provide supply side levers that miners can tinker with in order to make sure that the economics behind proof of work makes sense, but also, ways that they themselves can protect the long-term security of the network is going to be huge.
Yeah, definitely. And they actually have control of those parameters, don't they? Currently.
Yeah. Right now I'm not mining. I told the community I wouldn't be mining until EIP-27 passed. Afterwards, I will be. And and there may be some times where I'm like, hey, everybody, either the profitability needs some adjustment, otherwise we put ourselves at risk, or we have some attack vector on the network that we need to look at. Then hopefully I can at least start that discussion. Now I don't have the biggest farm or anything, so in terms of like vote and like raw hash power, I'm a little guy, but I certainly would like to have that discussion longer term, because that's going to be something that we need to kind of steward over time.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure that storage rent makes sense, make sure that the economic incentives are there to secure the network, because without that security, we have no network.
That's the thing as well. You see other chains which kind of, they don't look at their miners as favorable as other chains. I'll just leave it at that. Whereas here, we're just trying to empower and bring as much value to the miners themselves as possible.
I get both sides. On one side, if you look at Autolycos 1, right, in order to mine there, you had to have a full node. Okay. And if you have to have a full node, that means you have to have certain hardware requirements. That means you're carrying the chain, right? So a lot of the base assumptions of like the, let's call it democratic governance that Ergo has, was based on the assumption that every miner is going to, be running a full node, which, not only do you have work, but you also have kind of your own rig. You're going to be carrying the history of the chain. You're going to be more invested. It takes time to sync a node. It takes time to set that up versus, we have really lowered the barrier of entry into mining with things like Hive, to where if you want to mine from chain A to chain B, it's a snap of the fingers and off you go.
You just click a toggle and away you're off.
And away you're off. And for some miners, that's a great tool, right? Because it allows them to always maximize their returns. But for projects, sometimes it's like creates a certain like mercenary class of miner that I can understand the incentive for that. I can't speak against that. They have costs that they're trying to cover. They have hardware that costs money, electricity that costs money. They got lights to keep on, mouths to feed, all that. So I can't like dunk on them at all, but I can say if you're going to come into a proof of work ecosystem, please don't mine the largest pool. Like that would be like the courteous thing to do, because if we get all of this migration from Ethereum, that is enough to break a lot of proof of work chains. If they don't use that wisely, that could create some major issues. And then it's like, okay, well, if you destroy the proof of work environment and now you have all of these rigs and electricity to cover, et cetera, that's not very smart.
Yeah, it's a disadvantage to yourself, really, isn't it? You're shooting yourself in the foot by potentially attacking the chain, which then loses trust and value. So
Yeah,
you want to sort of...
It's going to be really interesting to watch post merge. Personally, I would like to see a reset to where, in Ethereum, the devs didn't really give a shit about the miners, and the 1559, kind of just burned their profits for
literally
no particular reason that I can figure out. So I can understand mining with a grudge at that point.
Yeah, definitely. The thing is, it's still profitable, and they're still there making money off the chain, and ultimately it's going to backfire at some stage, and it will go proof of stake. But until then, I can see the value or extracting value from ETH still.
Yeah, and there's a lot of miners that are still mining ETH because it's most profitable. But once that bomb goes off, they're kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that karma comes full circle.
All right.
I hope that they do something successful. I don't want to root against anyone, but I'm just saying there's a certain animosity in the space, and it's like, okay, well, if we're going to be like the second wife of them, so to speak, we need to set new terms and conditions. Make sure that we don't bring any of that toxicity into the future, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And just leaving on that note as well, if you do come and join Ergo, please distribute your hash rate accordingly across pools.
Yeah, we have great pools, but proof of work is ultimately based on distribution of hash rate. So if you want proof of work to be something that's viable long term, that's something to respect.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope that happens. I don't want to be up late at night. When I started, Nano had a pretty large majority, and I spent a lot of time adding pools and trying to get miners to distribute their hash rate. So I'd rather not have PTSD again.
I remember that clearly. Actually, it was when I really got stuck into the community. So you're constantly delivering new pools.
Yeah. So hopefully we can avoid that situation moving forward. I have no power there, but I can say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, kids, please behave, and then whatever happens, happens.
That's it. Righto, let's jump into the dev update. So we can kick things off with Glasgow. So on his side, he's been updating the ErgoDocs as people work through the latest Ergo hack, and is helping out where he can. He's impressed, I think, with all of us as well, with the quality and the amount of documentation, say blog posts and updates on Twitter and things that the projects are putting out. That's great to see.
It really is. Especially on the documentation side, that's so huge.
Yeah.
Because even if a project comes in and they don't even complete, but they leave kind of like, their documentation, their clues for the next character that wants to pursue that path, it can accelerate things.
Yep. I think that kind of happened with the SubPooling for Ergo hack. Karat put the sort of groundwork in, and that's ultimately where GetBlok has stemmed from.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's the beauty of open source. It really is that not only can you review code, but you have the potential to improve upon it.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone benefits.
Everyone benefits, yeah.
Then also he mentions, in light of the UST fiasco, that's one we won't be forgetting for a little while, there's been an uptick in stablecoin interest. So he's created a Sigma USD improvement proposal repository. So to facilitate discussions and potentially desired changes. So in our main Telegram, there's been constant conversation in regards to improvement processes and things we can make to stable coins and then sigUSD as itself in itself.
Yeah, I actually have one of the governance tokens.
Oh, really?
In terms of updating the smart contract. Now, the reality is it's something that I was always secretly hoping I could just burn at some point.
Yeah.
That would be ideal for me. I'll send it to outer space, and then at that point kind of step back from needing to, because the reality is when you change the rules mid-game, it always hurts someone.
Yeah.
Every time, and even if the pain is minor, you could say, okay, well, do they consent to it, or is it just kind of being done to them? Because a big part of the assumption in the base layer anyway is immutability, right?
Yeah.
To where you have a stored history and things do not change. And when you get into smart contracts, you have to take some additional assumptions, because sometimes developers have the ability to push updates, and that's not, I would say space wide, that's not always done in like a transparent way, to where what's being done and why is it being done and who's being affected by it. So it's actually really a big thing in crypto as a whole that I think a lot of users would really benefit from just thinking about, because we do kind of go into this space with this assumption of immutability, and with smart contracts, that's not always the case. So like for me as a token holder, I don't want to vote and change the rules mid-game, and suddenly group A suffers because I decided to arbitrarily make a choice. So it puts me in a shitty position, to be honest. I was really hoping to just send it to the moon, but we'll see. I'm not quite sure how any type of improvement proposal would actually be voted on. We do have paideia now. Maybe that's like an option, or we do have just kind of like the run of the mill, I guess like community polling, but that's a tough decision. And, unfortunately I have that responsibility I was hoping to avoid.
Oh, well, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. and so, I'm going to try to be as hands off. Like if the community can come to some consensus and they can say, okay, well, this is our consensus and this is the demonstration of this consensus, and this is the party that will be affected, because someone will always be affected, right?
Yeah.
It's not a zero-sum game. It's like SIG reserve token holders. You're not on the same team in sigUSD. You're actually racing against each other for the exit to see who can exit most profitably.
I think people lose a lot of, they entered under the assumption that that wasn't the case, whereas in reality, it's always been the case. So ultimately, they are running against, or I myself have taken a position, we're running against each other.
Yeah, it's cutthroat game. It is a zero-sum game, to where like if you're in profit, you want to race out. And who knows, maybe if there were like some period where there tends to be a max exit, maybe we're going to see people even paying miners to race out.
Well,
I mean,
exactly. That's the advantage that you have, isn't it? It creates value for those, and that ultimately they're going to prioritize a higher fee.
Yeah. So there are some interesting proposals. I've looked through it, but as like the person who has to answer to the people that could potentially be hurt by just flipping the field mid-game, I'm not excited about it, but I do like the ideas. I will say that.
Definitely.
It's good discussion to have.
For sure. Okay, so moving on, we have morphic. Do you want to take morphic?
Sure. So in our trajectory this year, we have the EIP-27 vote. We talked about that earlier. The reference client's been out. After that, the next big potential update, which again relies on miner participation, governance, and voting, is going to be Node 5.0. And so there's been a lot of polishing and PRs that are being worked on in the background. And, a part of that is because EIP-27 was prioritized, right? Well, now that reference client has been released, there's some additional cleanup and review that Morphic and Alex are going to be working on. And then that is probably going to be a pretty long process. We have time, luckily, with the vote. So, I imagine for the next couple of dev updates, we're going to be talking about Node 5.0. But the reality is I have actually been talking about Node 5.0 in these updates for quite a long time.
Well, it's a big one.
It's a big upgrade, We're going to see better block space efficiency. The script engine is going to be faster. We're going to see a little bit more throughput. It's going to be a performance enhancement.
Then we'll get new questions on what's the TPS.
Yep.
That vain metric or vanity metric.
That's hard to answer in extended UTXO, because what does that even mean?
No more noodles, guys.
Yeah, really. Otherwise, when I'm mining again, first thing is I'm gonna raise the fees for the noodlers. Let's see. Other than that, we have some AppKit review, and it looks like he's just working on 5.0. That's going to be Morphic's baby for a little bit.
Happy days. I think Kushti actually has a bit of an update on 5.0 down here a little bit further as well. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. So moving on to Ilya. His focus for this week's basically been Explorer syncing improvements. So he's implemented configurable indexing, optimized the chain sync module, which was a big bottleneck. And then also into ErgoDEX. So the Ergo Cardano bridge integration is continuing research on that. Optimization of Ergo data pipeline. So the framework to allow processing events from Ergo network in real time, improving ErgoDEX testnet based on bug reports. So they've been doing a fair bit of work on the Cardano testnet for that one. ErgoDEX front end, they've initial wallet address selection behavior has changed. There's no caching of meta info or swap order info is now extracted to custom for each network. The Cardano and Ergo copy transaction ID button. And then pool price history, Cardano history, and the new TX history UI UX is a work in progress. So he's been a busy boy this week.
He's always a robot. He really is.
I don't know how these guys get through this. I'm continually amazed by the amount of work these guys get through week on week.
Well, Ilya's been around since Ergo's been around. He was and to some degree, you can see here, he still is the main Explorer developer. So he's got a pretty broad knowledge base in terms of our backend, because he's the one who helped build it and maintain it, and
he's the go-to guy.
Yeah, he's been the go-to guy.
Okay, so on to Nemo. You can take Nemo if you like.
Sure. Looks like Ledger's been optimized for stability in terms of how it communicates. Yep. Also looks like they have been playing with the registers for API price fetching on the device. And then he's got a hackathon project, which is basically taking the optimized Explorer that Ilya was mentioning above and building GraphQL calls on top of it. And I do believe that the path in terms of the GraphQL is the plan is to support Nautilus Wallet first with the GraphQL calls and open source that, push it around the community, and it gives developers a new Explorer to play with that hopefully they host and connect their dApps to. And we start to decentralize a bottleneck that we've had.
Yeah.
The bottleneck has been the public Explorer, where there's been some dApps that didn't host their own variation of the Explorer and kind of periodically would beat up the public one. And as a result, light wallets are affected. They slow down. I mean, it's an interesting point. Like, if you want to decentralize something, you have to localize it, right? And so if you're running a full node, you're not going to be affected by that because the node has its own API and can, operate without the Explorer. But when you are running a light wallet, you are kind of relying on whoever is hosting that infrastructure or server. And if that has any issues, so do you.
Yeah, ultimately dependent upon that infrastructure.
Yeah, so ultimately it is better to run a full node. It is, if you're having like any infrastructure issue, it's just more stable. Yeah. Now, hopefully, as we, see the NeoPopal sync and we kind of build out the node, we're going to have, a better user experience. So it becomes easier and just more popular to run a full node. I'm actually not the biggest fan of light wallets because it does create an external dependency, and that to some degree is kind of against the point of a decentralized system. It's friendly though, I can't say that.
Yeah, having a little web wallet there, it's just click a couple of buttons and away you go sort of thing. But just running that node infrastructure, it's pretty simple to set up. I've done it multiple times now, and I've actually got the Pi syncing as we speak. So,
very nice.
So we'll see how long that poor little thing takes to sync up. So yeah, that's actually exciting. Having everyone sort of run their own infrastructure in regards to nodes, potentially explorers, bots, you name it.
Yeah, that's best practices, in my opinion.
But then you've taken that responsibility yourself as well.
Sure.
So moving on to Luivatra. He's been busy again. He's put ergo-python-appkit on PyPy. So now it's easier to install. You can follow that link there. The paideia contracts are also in PyPy. He's finishing off-chain bots for paideia. He's almost done testing as we speak. Added a minimal guide, so put some documentation together for the off-chain bots. He's got the front end for staking that will support multiple projects. It's being worked on for paideia, and Ergo Games will start with that one. New staking setup allows for adding of tokens to existing stake boxes. So that ties into actual Explorer as well. I think they were overloading the Explorer with the staking tokens, something along those lines. And then the paideia front end and back end are being worked on, and discussions on how they will implement the blockchain part of it as it's taking place. The ErgoPad guys are being nice and busy there as well.
Yep.
So on to Kushti, and as we sort of touched on, he's worked on the node, and the EIP-27 development. So he's released a couple of reference clients. 4.0.28 was released a couple of days ago, and then in QuickTime as well, the 4.0.29 with the EIP-27 support.
Yep. 28 was more specific to a particular node syncing issue that showed up, pushing a patch for that, and some, I believe, API improvements. 29 is more specific to EIP-27. I think he's going to be jumping on the 5.0, going through the plans and activation process, and kind of going through what he did before with EIP-27, making sure that number one, the back end of it is solid, and number two, that it's presented in a way that miners have the power. Then I believe he's also working on some formal specs for Dexy, where I know they've been working on formal paper for Dexy. So I think he's coming up with the actual analytical solutions for the math involved.
Yeah, and yeah, found an analytical solution, as he mentioned here, for bank reserves for Dexy.
Yep.
But also, just touching on 5.0 again, he just mentioned activation will be released with a new version in late June that is aiming, and that's obviously ties in with the vote ending for EIP-27.
Yep. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how Lady Luck favors, everything with that. Then I think we'll be ready for, 5.0. I think that might take a little bit of time in terms of just education, right? If we're going to be proposing, the power to miners to reconfigure and update to the system, we really need to get into the why. And I do think that it's going to be an easy update, in my opinion. But I think getting people to understand what and why is important. Otherwise, what's the point of governance, right?
Exactly. It's not a dictatorship, is it?
Yeah, I mean, we've proposed solutions. This is something that we've been working on for, over a year. But ultimately, if we something out there and the miners, for whatever reason, are opposed, they're opposed. They run the network. We need their security. And so then it becomes, kicks back to us and say, okay, well, what's the solution or compromise or path forward? That's
having that open dialogue is essential.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I know for a fact that Alex does not want to be king in the high tower of Ergo, and have some kind of dictator mandate that goes and affects everybody. Because it is kind of like I said earlier, when you change the rules mid-game, you create a potential to hurt people, and so suddenly they're no longer playing the same game with the same assumptions that they started with. And if the point of these systems, at least in the base layer, is immutability, we'd really need to have good governance in terms of why any type of change is made on top of the system.
So just on that, with the implementation or potential implementation of 5.0, that'll be another supermajority vote, yes?
I believe so.
Yep.
I haven't seen how it's going to be structured, but I would think that has to be the case.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to scalahub. So he's worked on Dexy EIP with Kushti that you just mentioned. Also working on Oracle Pool EIP with greenhat. Working on the redeem mechanism for the reward tokens for the Oracle pools, but then also reviewing the EIP-27 emission soft fork. So I'm not too sure what he's referencing there. Would that be the node itself? 29?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody's checking everybody's homework at this point.
Yeah.
That's just the software production. Like you can go over it, it works, you test it, it works, and then you push it, and there's always a certain let's just call it anxiety.
Yeah.
That maybe there's that one line somewhere that has something that shouldn't be there. So I know that Morphic is actually doing the same thing, just trying to do the last minute sweep before it's pushed live.
Yeah, I think we used the analogy a couple of weeks ago of the computer game and the person running through the wall.
Yeah, there's that tendency, as some people will say, okay, well, rarely is software finished in its first release. That's its first release. Well, this is a major change, right? So we don't have the luxury of, the kind of like V1.2. Yeah. We need to get this right the first time.
Yeah, most definitely. So on to greenhat. You can take greenhat away if you like.
Sure. From the looks of it, there's been a lot of work on the Oracle core. I'm not sure how that's going to come out of the hackathon, but I'm hoping that it comes out, together enough that we start seeing community members plug in and play with it.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big driver of DeFi on Ergo. I think the concept of having consensus over data, it just plays to the principle of the entire space. Like you just don't get into the trust me bro situation. And
there's too much of that going on, isn't there?
Well, it really is. I would call it a systemic risk, like nothing short of a systemic risk, especially once you start to get Oracle data that is centralized, coming from a single source, broadcast onto multiple chains. What would happen if that's compromised? It doesn't affect one system. It has the potential to affect multiple systems. It's just not best practices, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And the attack vector to try and manipulate that data, there's big incentive there as well, potentially by people shorting or whatever, for whatever reason of manipulating that data.
So it's something that even though it hasn't been too common of an exploit, it's in the background, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of these days we see a big Oracle hack or manipulation that causes some liquidations and just pain. That sometimes things are designed in just a somewhat fast and reckless way. Let's just say that.
Definitely. Leave it there. So moving on, he's got Dark Lord of Programming. I think these guys are working in ErgoHack as well as making Ruby bindings for ErgoLib.
That'll be interesting. I'm curious to see how it comes out. I saw that he actually dropped that on Twitter, but I didn't have time to actually open it up and look at anything.
Yeah, likewise. I've seen that one there. And then he's taken a deep dive into planning update for contracts and boxes, operations, implementations, found the way too complex, and asked scalahub for some simplification. And then just wrapping up the Oracle core, more DevOps, revamping logging, exit codes. So yeah, just more on the Oracle core itself. That would be Oracle core 1.0 or 2.0?
That would be 2.0.
Yeah.
So it's some of the box structures have been moved around to make it more efficient, less dusty. I think we're going to see a really big update. The first was kind of like I'll just call it a minimal viable product in terms of like the security structure. But optimizing the economic performance of it was needed. So that's kind of been in skunkworks, and now is coming out into the wild here pretty quick.
Yeah, hopefully by the end of ErgoHack. Just a little quick update from scalahub, just in reference to greenhat. You'll take a couple of looks, or a look at the couple of suggestions that he's got in regards to preserving reward tokens for the 2.0 update in Oracle pools. MrStahlfelge, you can take him away. I'm learning. Yeah. I keep saying it.
That was pretty good. The biggest thing he's been working on that I would say has huge value right now is TokenJay. Basically, that allows users to interact with sigUSD, which is our stablecoin, and Sig Reserve with a lower fee parameter, which is a pretty big deal. Now, I believe he's also been working on implementing chain transactions within TokenJay, and playing around with the ability to kind of have multiple. Your input becomes your output, right? Or your output becomes your input. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And
so you have to get your head around it.
yeah, you have to get your head around it, and so that's a huge tool. It just makes things more usable.
Yeah, I've used TokenJay myself. went smoothly. Used the ErgoWallet, scanned the QR codes. More than happy to actually gave MrStahlfelge some feedback on that. So yeah, couldn't have worked better.
Yeah, I'm excited. He's got a couple of neat P2P things that potentially could be coming out soon. So
watch this space.
Yeah.
He's got an escrow service underway as well. I was just reading here. So that'd be a nice little neat thing if someone wants to do some transfers or something like that.
Sure. And I know I've been encouraging him to look into P2P tools for invoice services, things like that as well, which I think that could be a huge tool longer term for adopting Ergo into like a simple point of sale system that's possible on the phone. That would be really cool to see, because then suddenly you give businesses, entrepreneurs, and just people the ability to actually invoice each other and have it payable in Ergo, which that just gets kind of the P2P use case moving, which I'm always happy to see that.
And that's pretty much where crypto stemmed from, really, isn't it? Having that ability to P2P.
That was the initial proposition, right? The initial proposition of Bitcoin was P2P money. That's changed a lot, and then it was like, oh no, it's gold, and now it's government reserve money, and we really haven't seen mass adoption and or use of real P2P money yet, in my opinion. So I think that if this space as a whole can solve anything, aside from a lot of the complex and fancy DeFi stuff and metaverse, and I would like to see just like the first initial proposition of Bitcoin, P2P money that gets bootstrapped and used between people without the need or interference of a third party. That's huge.
Definitely.
But in order to do that, we do have to have the tools and the user experience to make that seamless. And so hopefully we keep marching towards that goal as an ecosystem.
It'd be lovely to see. A non-BR with Ledger. So he's worked with the Tesseract team to fix the max token per transaction issue. Also talking with the Tesseract team to try and find a way to display receiving addresses on the device, but have limitations of a 3.5 kilobyte of availability. That's
can't believe
not much.
I can't believe people pay like $100 for 3.5. You know what I mean? That's doesn't make sense to me, but okay.
Especially this day and age with technology and the size reduction in chips and you name it.
Yeah, and how many crypto users have multiple chains, multiple tokens, multiple NFTs?
Yeah,
it's 3.5. What is this? Ledger needs to up their game. I'm sorry.
And then also just researching lightweight pure JS serialization library for addresses and sigma constraints. So that sounds fun as well.
Yeah.
Another wallet, haileypdll, has just released SafeWallet version 0.6.1. Addresses the Ledger register issues. And on to Cheese Enthusiast. You can take Mr. Karat, Cheese Enthusiast.
GetBlok. Actually, didn't they do a space with you on the dark cave mining?
We did our first live stream just last past Monday. It was a little bit rushed getting it all together, so had a little bit of availability issues initially. Karat was eventually going to join us, or Cheese Enthusiast, but he's doing some study, I think, at this stage. So he'll be on next week, and we want him to expand on the plasma side of things, and then the nuts and bolts of the subpooling.
That's definitely what I'm looking forward to seeing. Is it coming on and getting onto scaling a smart pool is really something that number one, a smart pool's never existed outside of theory before GetBlok. And as everybody in the space is looking at like layer 2 scaling solutions, the fact that we have a mining pool that is working on scaling on-chain data, that blows my mind every time I think about it. So I'm just impressed with what GetBlok's putting together. So it looks like SubPooling releases are going to be coming out soon. Those of you that don't know, that's where friends can solo mine together. So it's like solo mining guilds or something along that line. Yeah. They came out with a new UI that has been, came out polished. It's pretty nice. Check it out. Yep. Scales pretty well, moves around. You can see the transaction or the block transactions and how many blocks they've collected and payouts and all kinds of good stuff that's actually on chain, which is pretty cool. And as Plasma scales, hopefully GetBlok is able to scale and also provide that same transparency that does not exist anywhere else in the mining space.
Yeah, Rob was touching on that as well in regards to transparency, just on the proof of vote actually, and then their obligation to actually implement EIP-27, which their miners actually voted on. It's a disadvantage to themselves if they don't do that because Cheese Enthusiast wrote it into the smart contract. If
Suicide Squid.
Yeah, they don't get any rewards if they don't implement it. So that's what they're doing.
That's the way to go. When you look at certain parts of the crypto space, and again, this is something people don't necessarily know or think about, there are certain black boxes, right? If you look inside of an exchange wallet, to a large degree, it's a black box. You're not going to really be able to see, individual sub wallets in an exchange and what they're doing. They can, but nobody else can. And the same thing is true with mining pools. When you have blocks that are hidden payouts, that's all done kind of just in a way that's not transparent. People can't see that.
Just using that term again, trust me, bro.
Yeah, it's closed. It's kind of like a closed source code. When you run around like a closed source wallet in crypto, don't use it. I wouldn't, because there's no assurance other than it's good. Yeah. And that's not the point. That's not the point of this industry.
Yeah.
And ideally, more people start figuring that out and start calling just bullshit.
Yeah.
You can look at what happened with Terra. They froze their chain. How do you do that?
Yeah.
In a decentralized environment?
It blows my mind. You've got
It was pre-centralized. It was set up to be that way.
Yeah.
But I guess people didn't care.
People make the claims and they can make money on it, and that's all people care about at the moment, which is pretty sad to see.
Well, there's I don't know. There's a certain burn off that happens when things, let's say, overgrow and markets move around. Hopefully, knock on wood. Assumptions become more important because that's the entire point of the industry is having transparent security assumptions that understand, you can see the attack vectors, and as a result, you can trust without trusting anyone.
The most important thing. Once you've lost it, then I was like, that's a funny thing you mentioned there, trust in regards to, say, Luna or Terra. They're talking about forking and creating 2.0 or Luna Classic or whatever. In my mind, I just can't comprehend how people will trust that second chain, but then obviously people will dive headfirst in there just to make a profit.
I can't say too much in terms of like, yeah, that'll probably happen. Even as it was crashing, there were people that were like, oh, look at this fantastic discount. And it's like, what? Stay away from the knife. Do not stick out your hand. And we still had people that were like, oh, it's going to come back. Don't worry.
In a death spiral.
And who knows? Yeah, I'm sure there was a ton of liquidity that just got sunk into that black hole. in my opinion, outside of crypto, trust is the most valuable asset every person has in life. The trust in themselves, the trust of other people. And it is true that sometimes when you burn that bridge, it's not coming back. And in my opinion, I would stay away from it, but I can't say that actors in the crypto space always act rationally with well thought out reason. There's a reason why there's like, let's just ape it and see what happens.
Full degen.
Yeah, it's painful to watch sometimes because, people get hurt.
Yeah, I've read a couple of tweets where people have been jumping into the death spiral at, say, $1 or $5 or something like that, and then just decimal points just keep getting added on. And yeah, it's sad to see exit liquidity.
It is. It's, it's just not what this industry is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
That like insane gambling and to some degree insane products with insane promotion.
Yeah,
is just garbage.
Definitely need to get back to those first principles.
Yeah, that's what built the space.
Okay, so moving on. Now we've got pragmaxim, once again working on node improvements. So you can check out those, locking wallet while rescanning on the node. And now working on Java-friendly method to send bulk payments in ErgoWallets. The Liquid Phase, one of our ErgoHack contestants, he looks like he's been very busy.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. For users that don't know, I guess Swamp Audio is somewhat like you can guess what it is, but it's a ErgoHack project that's trying to put together audio NFTs. My opinion, that's something I would like to see. I think music is, kind of like a fundamental pillar of culture, and I just enjoy it more than art. Sorry, artists. Everybody has different tastes.
Everyone's
I guess,
got their poison.
Yeah, everybody's got their poison. But I thought, how cool would it be if, like, in the past, you could have, somebody that had gained some notoriety or fame, pick artist A, and you could have one of their early works that was exclusive. There's certain, let's say collector value to that. And plus, in a decentralized community, you already have a fairly large reach or audience or, community that you're playing to. So I think putting those together could really create some magic. And, I guess there's like the cliche of like the starving artist and musician. Well, NFTs have done a pretty good job of feeding artists, but musicians haven't quite had their bellies
not yet
with the NFT market. So I would love to see that, kick off, because it's just something I would enjoy. I could see myself buying a audio NFT if I really enjoyed the music and, having it on your playlist.
Yeah, it's another industry that can be decentralized, isn't it? With large players such as recording studios and things, you can see a little bit of a movement with artists moving more independent. And this once again adds more value to reach more users as well.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, potentially like the people that consume it actually own it.
Yeah.
versus versus like a lot of the times it's not even the musician, it's the label that kind of owns and controls everything, and then has some royalty portfolio after the person's gone that just kind of stays in house. So it would be nice to see that become more of a free market.
Yep, most definitely. So they've put a lot of the back end together, working on the front end as well. Looks to be all seamless. And then I think they put a PR in, didn't they, for the EIP-004, and that was something along the lines of Luivatra put in regards to a utility type a register, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a utility type token, which they're trying to give different functionalities to NFTs, simply put. And that type of flexibility is important. I think it will be valuable long term.
On to LowKeyNerd. This is another big update from these guys.
Yeah.
So onboarded a website dev. The art competition has ended and they've now got 4 artists on their team. I can see some of their artwork in a second. Some of their metrics, their Discord's approaching 200 members, Twitter approaching 200 members. Their YouTube channel now has over 300. And their overview video has more than 50,000 views. That's pretty impressive.
He's more popular than me.
Yeah,
I'm glad to see that. Yeah, I'm glad to see that, you know.
Brings awareness to our ecosystem as well.
Yeah, and you know, I've always said that over the long arc of time, the people that are going to bring the most eyes, the most adoption are not the core developers. It's the people that take the tools that the core developers build and find their own niche, passion, use case, and follow that.
Ultimately, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Enabling the user, empowering everyone. So they've got their art competition recap video they've put together, gameplay storyboard video. They're jumping into the videos, aren't they? Then some more dev stuff, and then into the white paper and some artwork. So here's some of the art that's been put together by the competition entrants. Pretty cool, I must admit.
It's pretty high level stuff.
Yeah, jump on there and check out their videos if you'd like to know a little bit more about Blitz TCG.
Yeah.
Lato Pixel. He's finished a tutorial for how to install a node on a Mac in English and Spanish. Else working on following tutorials to explore the Node API and applications written in Python and ergo-python. And then he's also playing with some bots. So ones that display info for the Ergo blockchain, info for token IDs and name, wallet info, ability to claim rewards for Ergo's ZX holders, and newer improvements are playing the Nodo API. So he's playing with Little Pi itself as well, Little Pi 1. I think that actually, what does that return? When an NFT is sold, I think it's displayed on his... So you're talking about miners tinkering and things. We've got all these guys tinkering with all these little pies and...
yeah, that's huge, especially when you have the documentation, or in this case, a video tutorial that you know, is the average user that is not a tinker, that has never touched a node, that has no idea what that is, can go through kind of like a step-by-step easy mode, you know, master class on how to make a node on a Mac.
Yeah.
That just delivers value, in my opinion, and it brings users in and gives them the tools that they themselves can start being responsible for themselves. You know, ultimately, if you take a node, you know, you have a little bit more power and security than you would if you were just running a client.
And a little bit of an advantage in regards to setting mining fees and prioritizing transactions. Onto ErgoLend. You can take ErgoLend if you like, mate.
Sure. It looks like they've Dockerized their repo, so you can sign in and run the Docker. Looks like they are implementing the ErgoPay module. and they're going to be working on finishing that and working on the single lender token for sigUSD.
Sweet. Now, Guac Swap, another community project. Finished multi-token swap contract. They still need to test. That's just a quick one here. So yeah, you can just jump onto their repo themselves or their Git and check that one out. And finally, a non-real. You take that.
We've got a lot of progress on the new auction house front end and back end with the new version of the node. It's got some pending stuff that will hopefully be finished soon. And he's got an actual dev that's working for him that is jumping on tasks for Ergo team. And we'll hear about that soon. So Ergo team is kind of like a joint spending tool that it's kind of like a upgraded, simplified zero knowledge treasury without, I don't think it's going to have the privacy aspect of it. Curious to see what happens. And, you know, the auction house certainly could use an upgrade. So that's going to be exciting to see. I think that having competing products like that just creates the right atmosphere for innovation.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of screenshots running around as well of the improved UI for the auction house. So I dare say that'll come out in a quick amount of time.
I hope so.
Okay, so that's pretty much all that sorted. Do you have any final words?
You know, it's still ErgoHack. So everybody that is participating, appreciate your work. I'm excited to see what everybody comes up with. And, you know, ultimately, when you're building, hopefully we see open source documentation and, you know, the community then can hop in and assist in a lot of these projects. If you look at from ErgoPad to ErgoLend to ErgoDEX, when you have open source contracts available, you always tend to find community assistance in the Ergo ecosystem. And so in creating an idea or pushing it out, following that recipe gives you a lot of support.
Yep, very well said. So if you want to check out what people are up to as well, you can jump over to the Discord and ask some questions and ultimately read about what their guys are up to. So by all means, jump over there and then also follow them on Twitter. People are putting constant updates on Twitter as well. So yeah, by all means, follow along.
All right.
All right, too easy. Thanks very much, mate. Thanks again.
Yes.